Steve here with Allied RPG. In this video, I will be attempting, probably poorly, to explain what exactly is Dungeons & Dragons and how do you play it. As always, please like and subscribe. I am going to try to do this video in one shot, okay? So bear with me. This is intended for people that are going, hey, I've heard a lot about this game. I don't really know what it is. It sounds kind of interesting. Want to check it out, but I'm a little bit, hesitant, and it's a little bit daunting, and that's totally understandable. At the end of this video, I'll give you a solution to that, or what I hope to be a solution. Now, if you are a long-term D&D player or role-playing game player, stick around because I'd love to hear your comments below. Help some people along, get them into the hobby. So let's start with what exactly is D&D? Well, technically speaking, Dungeons & Dragons is a brand, and it started in 1974, so it's been around quite a bit, and it is what is called a tabletop role-playing game. I have to say tabletop because we need to distinguish it now between role-playing games because there's video games. They didn't have that back in 1974, not like we do now. So we have to distinguish that we're talking about tabletop role-playing game, okay? So what exactly is it? I describe it as collective storytelling. You have 5 or 6 people at a table that are essentially spinning a story of adventure. Think The Hobbit, Lord of the Rings. That's kind of classic D&D fantasy world type of thing. So you build a character. That character has certain statistics, how strong they are, how smart they are, things that they can do. And then that character is placed into a world or a campaign setting, as we call it, and they do an adventure. That adventure is run by someone called the DM, the Dungeon Master if you're old school, or the GM, Game Master if you're new school. I'm old school, so you'll probably hear me use a little bit of both from time to time. But that Dungeon Master essentially tells the narrative and then lets the characters add to that story by saying, well, my guy's going to do this, or she's going to do that. And so with that, there comes a lot of encounters with other characters. There are some terms that you'll hear from time to time, like PC, that's a player character, that's you if you're playing. And then there's NPCs, or non-player characters. That's anything from like the innkeeper that you encounter, or a monster even, okay? And those are typically run or controlled by the Dungeon Master. They're the ones that will kind of work for the NPCs, so to speak. So that's basically it. So the story goes along, scenarios are presented, characters say, well, hey, I want to do this and that. And then there's a lot of dice rolling. Well, what is all this dice rolling? Well, it has to do with your character's statistic, or what we call the stat block. And almost every living thing, and I think some inanimate things as well, have stat blocks. And it basically gives all the statistics on what they can do, on their strengths, weaknesses, that kind of thing. And then as you do the encounters, you kind of measure up those 2 different stat blocks and see, were you able to accomplish this, were you not able to accomplish this. Those have certain, I guess, percentages or chances of happening or not. And that's why you get all these different dice, because 1 out of 4 versus 1 out of 12 and that kind of stuff. How much damage did you do? That's why we have all these different dice sets. The most ubiquitous one is this D20. That's almost the symbol, so to speak, of tabletop role-playing games, is the 20-sided die. And you'll hear that referred to as a D20. You'll hear terms like, I rolled a natural 1. That means that a 1 showed up, and that's the actual number without any modification. Or a natural 20, which is also called a critical hit, which means if you rolled a 20, a perfect 20, that whatever you tried to do is automatically accomplished, or whatever. So anyway, that's how the story unfolds. Now, I made this video because I know that a lot of you are looking around at this and saying, hey, can I get into that? And then you start to discover that there's a giant library of books. And you also start to discover that, wait a minute, there's not just Dungeons & Dragons. There's Pathfinder, there's ICRPG, there's Allied RPG. This is the one that we created. Well, what do I do, right? Well, most people gravitate toward the classic Dungeons and Dragons, so they buy 3 manuals, and these manuals are pretty thick, and then they get excited, they start reading, and then, wow, that's a lot to keep in your head. How could that possibly happen? I don't barely know how to jump in as a player, and I certainly don't have enough energy or mental whatever to put behind being a DM. So now I'm stuck. I've got this thing that I want to do, but I can't really play. So what do you do in that kind of scenario? Well, this is going to be kind of the shameless plug part of the video, so to speak. But we ran into that. We saw a lot of people running into that, and we've created something called Alloyed RPG. Now, let me explain something first of all. What is it? What isn't it? I'll start with the fact that every single person that I know that plays Dungeons and Dragons has never, and go ahead, you can try to kill me in the comments if you want to, but it's not going to work. I don't know of a single table I have ever been at, and I've been playing since the 80s, but I can't think of a single table that didn't have some kind of a house rule or a homebrew, as we call it. So in other words, are they really playing Dungeons and Dragons, or are they doing some kind of modification? So for those of you new at it, think about playing Monopoly with your family and you guys decide, we don't really like those cards or this particular thing, so we're going to kind of do our own little rule here. That's a house rule, or as we call it in D&D, homebrew, okay? Every single DM that I know has homebrew, okay? We just happen to put it all in a book. All right, we wrote ours down. So sometimes we take a lot of criticism for that, because this really, you can call it a different system if you want to, and we have. We just wanted to, be honorable to the actual creators of D&D. But the reality is, this is just sort of our homebrew codified. Now, what we tried to do here, and we'll do more videos about how to play Alloyed RPG, is we tried to strip things down and kind of hold your hand as we go through. So one of the things you can do is check out in the description on this video. It's also in the channel description, but I don't think the link goes live until the channel monetizes. But we will have, this is in print on Amazon. It's Alloyed RPG Core Rules 2.0. You can get it on Amazon in print for like $5, but we're also always going to have this as a free download PDF. And what it will do is it'll get you started. The actual core rules are only 10 pages, maybe 20 if you count sort of the gear that's in there. It explains everything step by step. And it also has a sample campaign, so you can actually start playing right away. And what we tried to do with this is make it so that people who are new to the hobby can jump right in. Now, that can be used on its own, or it can be used in conjunction with D&D or Pathfinder or ICRPG as a way of getting people into role-playing games. So if you are looking at role-playing games and you're confused, or you start getting the manuals and you go, oh my gosh, I'm never going to understand this, go ahead, download Alloyed RPG, walk through it. It'll take you about a half an hour to read the whole thing. And I guarantee you it will give you an understanding of how you actually play these role-playing games. So I hope that helped a little bit. I hope it was encouraging and not discouraging if you're new to it. If you are an old-time player like myself, feel free to comment below. Just keep it civil. I want to hear a little bit of your thoughts on what exactly is D&D, and maybe even say, at what point does it no longer become D&D, right? Because we all kind of throw that term around. So, again, thanks for watching, and may your dice always roll with advantage.